Hey, I wanted to give some perspective of my experience in cryptography on, especially in crypto. So I'm Federico, Fred, or as you prefer. I'm the founder of LambdaClass. I have been working distributed systems on also applied cryptography on exploit development for the last 18 years of my life. It's the only thing I know how to do. On the last 6 years, I have been working in infrastructure in crypto, especially on Ethereum, mostly on low-level stuff rather than higher level. On the last 2 years, I have been focusing a lot of my work on my company's work in CK, validity proofs, or computational integrity, or however you prefer to call it. So the first slide is a slide I like because I come from Argentina. Argentina is a very chaotic, complex country. We have 110% inflation. We have like 5 presidents in, I think, 5 days or something like that. On the last few years, I think we exported the worst of our country to the rest of the world. A few years ago, I remember I opened a newspaper and I saw this picture and I was like, what? Like, what's happening in the US? Like, for me, living in South America, the US was like the reference of things organized and things working correctly. I think this picture shows that we're going into a very complex world. It doesn't matter if you come from the right, from the left, if you're rich or you're poor. What's sure, from my point of view, is that things are going to be more complicated. That doesn't mean that they're going to be bad. I'm not a negative person, or I try not to be, but, I do think that things are going to be way more complicated. One example of this is that, for example, in my country, there was a lawsuit against the judicial system because the election of one particular judge judging a corruption case was selected by hand. It was not selected by randomly. Normally, in most countries, the selection of judges is done randomly. So that's a good example of something that concerns us is related to blockchains, to crypto. Something as simple as throwing a dice nowadays is being questioned. I'm seeing similar things happening all around the world. Like, everybody's questioning everything that exists. That's related to inequality, on the transition in some way from the West to the East, on different demographic changes we're seeing in the world. So from my point of view, that's why it doesn't matter where you sit on the ideological spectrum or in terms of wealth or values, we all should embrace infrastructure that cannot be criticized. Infrastructure that works in any case, where there are no like big debates. If you come from engineering, the last few days, for example, there was a big debate in the Rust community. I work with Rust since the almost last decade. And there's a very big debate, even about things like how decisions are being made to choose people speaking in conferences. So everything's being questioned on, we need systems that can adapt to those environments. So a concrete example of what I'm trying to say is, like, at left, we can see that a white hacker hacked into Microsoft Bing search engine, one of the biggest search engines, and changed the output of best soundtrack when you search that. That seems something silly, but if a person can enter one of the biggest and most important infrastructures like the one that Microsoft runs called Azure, and change something as simple and nobody noticing that for a few days, it means we're in trouble, because you can change not only the content of things like banks, but also history, information. Like, I think you can imagine all the things you could do. On the right, there's something that is pretty interesting. I felt something similar, way less important in the last few months. Some users, I have read that some users were banned from WeChat. I have never used WeChat, but from what I understand, it's pretty important for people in China, because they have a lot of things, not only like the chat there. And if you don't have it, you cannot like communicate with your friends, manage your money, etc. I got banned twice in the last 3 months from Twitter. I didn't say anything strange. Actually, I think I'm more polite on the internet than in person. People that know me from Twitter believe I'm a person I'm not. So I got banned, and I was like, okay, I don't live with my Twitter, but there's people that do live from their Twitter or from their accounts, their personal accounts, because they're influencers or they organize events, they need to be well known. What can happen is that you get into a fight with somebody, or maybe you didn't even got into a fight with somebody. Somebody didn't like you in a very complex world, because the system is centralized and there's no dispute system. You can get banned. You don't have any access anymore to your followers, to your friends. I lost a lot of. I was in touch with many people from the crypto community with my previous account, and I lost them. In the last few days, they were like, "Hey, Fede, we didn't see you for like a few months or a few weeks." So what I'm trying to say is, like, in this complex world, these type of things, these types of issues are going to be really, really big. Actually, there was a dispute in the border between China and India in the middle of the pandemic. What happened at one point was that China tried to hack the electric, well, that's what the Indian government said, or in the newspapers, was that they tried to hack the power grid. And something similar happened in the US. So what I'm trying to show is, like, infrastructure is way more important than what we believe. And the reality is that infrastructure is not prepared for that. Like, if the systems are really fragile, they're really simple to hack. In most cases, the issues are not only on the code, but on simple procedures, like they don't get updated or nobody is monitoring them. So if we don't get this into a better place, it's going to get really rough, especially if we are more and more integrated into the VR world. So this is also a slide I really like. Not everyone is Vitalik. Vitalik was a genius. Like, he's a genius. He created something amazing that is bigger than him in many ways. He's not only a genius, he did something really difficult. He came from a more theoretical point of view, like his experience was more, from my point of view, attached to academia, to papers, and he created a very big beast that cannot die. Like, Ethereum only had a few issues in almost a little bit less than a decade. I mean, like, the infrastructure, not the smart contracts. It didn't have that many issues for the amount of money it has and from the amount of people that are trying to attack it. So I think what he did is pretty amazing, not only because of what he created, but because he did something really difficult that is to be amazing in two parts, like in theory and practice. I don't consider myself very good in theory and theoretical aspects. I'm way better, I believe, in practical things, and also my company. So I think there's an issue in the industry, and one of the issues is that we need to get better, is that the incentives are in place for people coming from academia to launch very big projects with a lot of money, without a lot of engineering experience, and those systems get easily hacked, and we don't have many opportunities. FTX already happened. My mama always tell me, like, hey, Fede, you should stop working in crypto. Like, you shouldn't steal money like FTX had. And I keep on explaining her, like, I don't do anything related to FTX. For me, FTX is not crypto. Like, if you don't have your keys, you're not, like, really managing your money. So what I'm trying to say is, like, we don't have many opportunities to show that this works, that this type of infrastructure can be built, this infrastructure that doesn't lie, that doesn't die, that cannot be easily hacked. If the systems we're building keep on crashing, keep on having security issues, common people will have the belief that they have right now, that this might not be adding that much value to the society. And I do believe, and you guys obviously too, that there's a lot of value in these systems. So one thing that I think needs to be changed is that economic incentives in the system need to get more similar to Web 2. They need to be more closer to launching products, working products. This is, I forgot to talk about this slide. I was going to go to the next one. So what I mean by being more similar to Web 2, this is a book by Apple, Working Backwards. Instead of designing things from academia or engineering, the two, and then seeing, like, what's the application we can find, I think it's really important that we start doing the opposite. Actually, last talk by Yael, I think it's a very good example of how to do product design and then to go engineering academia. Why? Because if you cannot send transactions, many users cannot send transactions when they don't have Ethereum on their wallet. And I had that issue when I started working with Ethereum. And I was like, hey, I want to transfer this. I cannot pay with another coin, or I cannot a friend pay for me the transfer. So we need to think a lot more about how we can solve a concrete need and then see how to implement that. Yeah, so we have been working in a lot of the L2s in the last few years, also L1s. Especially in the last few months, we focused a lot of our work in Starknet on what we saw is that these systems that are difficult to hack because of having a lot of mathematics that cannot lie, like that's the core idea of validity proofs on CK. One of the issues that existed right now is that they're not fast enough. They're very slow. In general, if you check, they're not faster in most cases. I think StarkX by Sarkor is a complete different beast, and it shows that it's very useful because it's fast. But in most open networks, the CK part didn't show yet its capacity of solving a concrete need, being faster. So the last few months, we focused a lot of our work in making things way faster. We believe that that's the main blocker at this moment for this to succeed. We have been trying to create this, LambdaWorks. LambdaWorks is a library. We have 25 people working on it. It's a public good. Anybody can hack on it, use it. We created that 2 months ago, 3 months ago. I don't want to go into all the technical details, but the core idea is that I think that there are not many cryptographic libraries that are fast enough, that are prepared to run in a phone. If we want these things to work and be used by Apple, be used by Microsoft, they need to have a good API. They need to have security practices, reviews, tests. Like many of the libraries, they don't even have tests. I don't know how many people from here are engineers, but me coming from Web 2, for example, we run an operation with 10 million requests per second, where every request is $1. So it's like $10 million go through those systems. I don't know, my boss would kill me if I didn't have tests on the things I'm publishing. And I'm baffled by the fact that we're launching these complex systems into the world. It's not that they don't have security practices, they don't have tests. Nobody review them, or repos that have 80% of the repo coded by one person, or auto merges, like people auto merging their own code. Like, we don't have many shots. I'm not trying to say like I'm doing things correctly and the others are doing things badly. I actually think I need to learn, or we need to learn a lot about theory, but there's decades of people working in engineering that know how to do these things. On many of the projects are violating all those practices that were created by amazing engineers all around the world. And if we don't get better at that, those systems will get hacked. A few weeks ago, we hacked a testnet because we kept on saying, like, there's a security bug here, you need to fix it. For different reasons that wasn't taken into account, we had to show it. And now we found a few security bugs in another, I don't want to mention the name, in another system. On the incentives are in place not to accept those issues, because many of the founders, they're young, they come from academia, they raise a lot of money, I mean like hundreds of millions of dollars. And if they accept those issues, they know they have to rework on many of the core parts of their system. So I think we need to put a little bit more pressure, a little bit more of like public due diligence, or not criticize those of us that try to make the whole system better. Because again, we don't have many shots. Like if we have another system that goes really badly on a lot of money, I mean like billions of dollars are lost, regulators will come, and they should, to make sure that we're doing our work correctly. That's what happened, like society works like that. If you keep on doing mistakes, there will be consequences. So the way of avoiding that is solving concrete issues, on getting people to review these things. For me, the things I'm mentioning are very obvious, but sometimes in the industry they're not. So we created this this was created by Lambda, my company. We're trying to do this work honestly for the whole ecosystem. If you have any questions, like we will gladly support your use case. We're working, for example, on IoT. We're trying to make Stark proofs thanks to the knowledge transfer that we got on the support we're getting from Sarkware, to work on ESP32, very small devices that cost $1. On one of the reasons I believe that's going to be really important is that many of the power grids will get hacked in the next few years. We need devices that cannot be hacked, that you can check their computation, you can make sure that things are working on real time correctly. If they don't, you can detect that somebody hacked and shut down the system. On RiskZero, another company, is doing something similar. I actually learned about this use case thanks to them. I think that all these primitives that we're creating are going to invade many of the other areas. At last, I wanted to mention that I think that apart from CK, the two other areas that are going to be really big in the next few years, and hopefully, if we get good engineering practices, they will work in traditional products, are fully amorphic encryption, the ability to operate on encrypted data, something really important since nowadays we are trusting all the centralized servers that I mentioned before, like Twitter, Apple, etc., on taking care of our data. And the third one is MPC, multi-party computation, the ability to compute between different parties. So that's it. If you have any questions, please let me know, and thank you.